May the sunset take away all your stress, worries, and turmoil. May your evening turn out to be soul relaxing and replenishing, knowledgeable and great. Good evening, everyone. With great joy and immense exultation, I extend my warm welcome to all dignitaries, guests, and delegates present here for the webinar series organized by Diksha e-Learning in association with Ayurveda College, Coimbatore. In today's session, we'll be discussing about a view on COVID-19 comorbidities, post-COVID complications, and preventive care.
Before starting the session, I'd like to go through a few of the basic instructions to be followed throughout the session. For uninterrupted class session, use laptop with a high-speed internet connection. Please make sure your microphone is on mute to have a disturbances-free session. In case of any disruption, please check your internet connection firstly, and if the problem is within our network connection, kindly raise the issue in the chat box. Filling your full name to be displayed is appreciated. Any question can be posted in the chat box, and questions raised will be cleared at the end of the session. It's a great pleasure for me to introduce our guest speaker, Dr. Asha Ma'am. Ma'am completed our UG from JSS Ayurveda Medical College and Hospital, Mysore, and MD in Swasthavrata from Sri Dharmasthala Manjunadeshwara College of Ayurveda and Hospital, Hassan. She is currently pursuing PhD in Swasthavrata from Sri Dharmasthala Manjunadeshwara College of Ayurveda and Hospital, Hassan. She started her career as assistant professor in Kaher's BHK Ayurveda Mahavidyalaya, Belagavi during 2018. She expertises in the areas of lifestyle disorders, therapeutic diet, and therapeutic yoga. Ma'am also presented papers at national and international seminars. We are very proud to have you here on the session today, ma'am. So now, without any further ado, we will turn the time over to respected Dr. Asha ma'am to enlighten our minds with her knowledge. Over to you, ma'am.
Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Namaste to everyone. Thanks for those warm words and introduction. I welcome you all for my presentation here. A view on COVID-19 comorbidities, post-COVID complications and its preventive care. So here is the discussion, Tadvidya Sambhasha from reference from Charaka Vimanasthana. There Acharya will be discussing on various aspects of epidemics. In that chapter, he also explains about preventive measures to be taken during epidemics, before epidemics, based on some other lakshanas. So while talking about the preventive measures to be taken at epidemics, he states that who should take the necessary precautions based on the epidemic. So he says, Echa asman anukangshanti, yamscha vayam anukangshamah. That is, whom we desire to give treatment because we know about the science, we learned about the science. It's our prime responsibility to create awareness in the public what is going to happen, and based on those the result, what we have to take the necessary precautions. And each asman anukangshanti yamsha vayam anukankshama, and who approach us for the sake of the treatment. The health seekers they may be health seekers, health clients, or the diseased person who will approach us for the sake of the treatment or suggestions or advice. We should treat them. So who may approach us? Those who are healthy and those who are at risk. Then who are at risk? We should know about who are at risk during such kind of epidemics. At risk, that people with comorbidities are at risk. Then what are the comorbidities? So etymology of comorbidity, here it goes. The comorbidity, the word is the etymology of comorbidity is the word is split into co and morbidity. That is, co is together, morbidity is illness or disease. Together, it means existing at the same time. So comorbidities, it is nothing but underlying health related conditions presenting at once. It is important that existing at once. So comorbidities generally are non-communicable, but seasonal epidemics of infectious disease may also present. These are called as co-infection. Why it is necessary to know about the co-infections? Because the winter is setting in, so many influenza-like conditions may also occur. So the doctors, the physicians, they should not confuse about the co-infection and related the similarities in the infectious conditions. So knowing about that seriousness, Ministry of Health and Family Welfare has issued the guidelines for management of co-infection of COVID-19 with other seasonal epidemic prone diseases. As the winter is setting in, there are high chances of various other diseases may also circulate along with COVID-19. Given the seasonal pattern of epidemic prone diseases observed every year in our country, the diseases like dengue, malaria, seasonal influenza, leptospirosis, chikungunya, enteric fever, etc., can not only present as a diagnostic dilemma but may coexist in COVID cases. This poses challenges in clinical and laboratory diagnosis of COVID and have a bearing on clinical management and patient outcomes. So we should be careful about the similarities in the infectious conditions. So comorbidities that could put at risk of contracting SARS-CoV-2. So this is the presentation has been made taking various research articles. So most prevalent comorbidities are presenting during COVID-19. These are hypertension, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, respiratory system disease, chronic kidney disease, obesity. Others include rare but important are lymphopenia, carcinoma, hypothyroidism, hyperthyroidism, scleroderma, and rheumatoid arthritis. So why we need to know about comorbidities in case of COVID-19? Because there will be hampered immunity if any other disease already is there, we are suffering from. So there will be hampered immunity and contradicting treatments. We will be taking one or the other medications if we have any comorbidities, then there will be contradicting treatments. If any disease already present, more likely to receive oxygen support, mechanical ventilation support, intensive care, because if any already disease is present, they need extra care like oxygen support, mechanical ventilation, intensive care. Presence of a comorbid illness is identified as a major risk factor, could aggravate the rate at which the coronavirus could affect the body and hamper recovery. People with pre-existing conditions face a higher mortality rate when compared to people affected with no comorbidities. For promotive and preventive measures, we need to know about the comorbidities in case of COVID-19. So this is the reference from Health Ministry status in our country. Notice that those who are more than 60 years of age are facing higher mortality rate, that is 53%, and those who are within 45 to 60 years, they are facing 35% of mortality, and so on. And total case fatality rate with comorbidity is very high, that is 17.9. Without comorbidity, that is 1.2%. So case fatality rate is higher if there is any underlying medical condition in case of COVID-19. If there is no any underlying condition in case of COVID-19, if one is suffering affected with COVID-19, if he is not having any comorbidity, then the case fatality rate is very less. That is, severity is less in him. So these are various research articles, status in our country, research articles taken, conducted in our country and around the world. So delineating clinical characteristics and comorbidities among 206 COVID-19 diseased patients in India, emerging significance of renin-angiotensin system derangement. Here, the result of this research is patients with cardiovascular disease, diabetes mellitus, and hypertension are at greater risk for developing COVID-19 infection. There may be massive derangement of the entire RAS, that is renin-angiotensin system, after the attack of COVID-19, and hence patients with these pre-existing comorbidities and on ACE inhibitors or angiotensin receptor blockers should be monitored carefully, considering the role of RAS in the prognosis of COVID-19 infection. Here, mainly we have to concentrate on massive derangement of entire renin-angiotensin system. Clinical characteristic, comorbidities and outcome among 365 patients of coronavirus disease 2019 at a tertiary care center in central India. This study concluded that 17% of dead patients had comorbidity. The most common comorbidity in deceased patients was found to be diabetes, followed by hypertension. Comorbidity and its impact on around 1,500 patients with COVID-19 in China, a nationwide analysis. The study showed most prevalent comorbidity was patients reported having 2 or more comorbidities. Directly confirmed cases of COVID-19, patients with any comorbidity yielded poorer clinical outcomes than those without. Does comorbidity increase the risk of patients with COVID-19? Evidence from meta-analysis. The result of this research study is the disease progresses rapidly if there is any underlying disease condition. The presence of any coexisting illness was more common among patients with severe disease than those with the non-severe disease. Another study, baseline chronic comorbidity and mortality in laboratory confirmed COVID-19 cases, results from the pre-COVID study in Spain. The conclusion of this study was, this is a gender-based study. So diabetes and chronic ulcer of the skin were common in both the gender. Although the infection was more prevalent in women, the study found that COVID-19 mortality was more common in men. In female adults, innate and adaptive immunity is generally stronger than in men. So even though both the genders have a higher severity, but female adults with the innate and adaptive immunity, the male were more susceptible to infectious diseases. COVID-19 and comorbidities, a systemic review and meta-analysis. This study explored the biology of SARS-CoV-2. SARS-CoV-2 uses its spike protein S to attach to cells via the angiotensin converting enzyme 2, that is ACE2 receptor, enters the cell following cleavage by TMPRSS2. So this is how into the cell that SARS-CoV-2 virus enters using the spike protein S. So ACE2 is heavily involved in the RAAS system. In hypertension, this is dysregulated and patients often take angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitors, which have been shown experimentally to increase ACE2 expression. Furthermore, immune dysfunction has also been shown to be linked with the hypertension. More specifically, CD8 plus T lymphocyte dysfunction may not only lead to decreased ability to combat viral infection, but also a possible dysregulation of cytokines. A dysregulated cytokine profile could play a role in the systemic inflammatory response syndrome. So remember this inflammatory response syndrome, because it is very important in COVID-19 and any other such infection, because due to this inflammation in the cells, there will be more severity of the disease. So this is another study, epidemiological comorbidity factors with severity and prognosis of COVID-19, a systematic review and meta-analysis. Here, this is a gender-based study. The meta-analysis highlighted the male gender, older age, and comorbidities showed strong epidemiological evidence of association with the severity and prognosis COVID-19. The gender and COVID-19 working group first raised the concern of the gender impacts of the COVID-19 outbreaks. All the evidences indicated that almost equal gender distribution and disease susceptibility, but males had higher rate of severity and prognostic endpoints. So coming to COVID-19 and comorbidities. So hypertension and COVID-19. What is the situation of COVID-19? If anyone is suffering from hypertension. So arterial hypertension is by far the most frequent comorbidity seen in patients with COVID-19. It has been speculated that the high prevalence of the infection could be due to the use of ACE inhibitors, since SARS-CoV-2 binds to AC2 to enter the target cells. AC2 is expressed in the lungs, heart, liver, kidney, ileum, and brain, and is physiologically involved in anti-inflammatory responses. SARS-CoV-2 has been claimed to increase the expression of angiotensin 2 with subsequent downregulation of AC2 and loss of anti-inflammatory effect in the respiratory tract, resulting in alveolar wall thickening, edema, inflammatory infiltration, and bleeding. That is why in case of COVID-19 with underlying medical cause, that is hypertension, the severity of infection will be more. Coming to cardiovascular
Excuse me, ma'am.
disease and COVID-19. Cases of acute myocarditis associated
Ma'am,
with
sorry for the
COVID-19
disturbance, ma'am.
have been reported, and a direct myocardial injury has been postulated. In an autopsy report for 23 patients with COVID-19, 13 showed cardiac manifestation and had multifocal acute cardiomyocyte injury. In a meta-analysis,
Dear delegates, there's some technical issue and we are working on it. Please do stay with us.
hello.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, yes.
Now you're
Am
audible.
I audible? Yes. Till
Yes.
when I have to
Now you can start from this slide, ma'am.
revise? Shall I?
Yeah, you can
Were you
start.
following hypertension, COVID-19,
Yeah, hypertension was
and now
going on, ma'am.
cardiovascular? Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. So comorbidity, hypertension, and COVID-19. So arterial hypertension is by far the most frequent comorbidity seen in patients with COVID-19. It has been speculated that high prevalence of the infection could be due to the use of ACE inhibitors, since SARS-CoV-2 binds to ACE2 to enter target cells. SARS-CoV-2 has been claimed to increase the expression of angiotensin 2 with subsequent downregulation of AC2 and loss of anti-inflammatory effect in the respiratory tract, resulting alveolar wall thickening, edema, inflammatory infiltration, and bleeding. Coming to cardiovascular disease and COVID-19, Cases of acute myocarditis associated with COVID-19 has been reported and a direct myocardial injury has been postulated. In an autopsy report for 23 patients with COVID-19, 13 showed cardiac manifestation along with pulmonary involvement. 3 patients had obesity and had multifocal acute cardiomyocyte injury. In a meta-analysis of around 4,000 patients from 28 observational studies, patients with more severe COVID-19 had higher troponin concentration, which was associated with an increased risk of death. That troponin is found when there is a cardiac muscle tissue damage in the cardiac muscle. A manifestation of secondary cardiac involvement in COVID-19 is stress-induced cardiomyopathy. Cardiovascular complication might also develop because of reduced systemic oxygenation due to pneumonia and concomitant increased cardiac demand by immune dysregulation, electrolyte imbalance, or because of adverse effects of drugs.
Dear delegates, there's some again a minor technical issue and we're working on it. Please to stay with us.
Sorry, because very much cloudy weather here in
No problem,
Mysore.
ma'am. That's okay.
Yes.
You're audible now, ma'am.
Yes. So obesity and COVID-19. Many reports have linked obesity to more severe COVID-19 illness and death. Several mechanisms can account for this association. This shows uh, what is the severity of COVID-19 if one is having obesity. The first concern, the detrimental restrictive ventilatory effect of abdominal fat. Due to abdominal fat, there will be a restrictive ventilatory effect. Second, in addition to the ventilatory defect, the respiratory dysfunction in patients with severe COVID-19 might depend on impaired lung perfusion due to intravascular disseminated coagulation. Obesity and diabetes are prothrombotic conditions that might contribute to worse prognosis in patients with COVID-19. Finally, obesity is associated with immune dysregulation and chronic inflammation that could mediate progression toward organ failure in severe COVID-19 patients. Myocarditis and cardiomyocyte dysfunction could be worsened by local biological effects of epicardial adipose tissue, a source of adipokines and pro-inflammatory mediators, and the volume of epicardial adipose tissue is directly associated with the BMI. Moreover, ACE2 is highly expressed in the epicardial adipose tissue of patients with obesity. This could promote virus internalization into the adipocytes and enhance tumor necrosis factor. Liver steatosis might also play a role. Elevated aspartate aminotransferase concentration have been associated with poorer prognosis in patients with COVID-19. Obesity and diabetes are characterized by chronic low-grade inflammation with increased concentrations of pro-inflammatory leptin and reduced anti-inflammatory adiponectin. Additionally, people with obesity are often physically inactive, more insulin resistant, and with gut dysbiosis, which might increase the inflammatory response to infection with SARS-CoV-2. Moreover, individuals with obesity have lower vitamin D concentrations, which could also reduce the immune response. The role of vitamin D supplementation is currently under clinical trials. Therefore, in protocol, normal protocol, we give vitamin C, vitamin D, and the specific medications in case of COVID-19. So, inflammation and COVID-19. SARS-CoV-2 infects not only cells of upper respiratory system and alveolar epithelial cells in the lung, but also, among others, circulating immune cells, inducing apoptosis of lymphocytes to an extent that reflects the severity of SARS-CoV-2 infection. So CD3, CD4, CD8 and all, you know that these are all immune cells. As T cells of the adaptive immunity system inhibit overactivation of innate immunity, the resulting lymphocytopenia might suppress the innate immune system and enhance secretion of cytokines. You should be knowing about the cytokine in case of COVID-19. The overproduction of pro-inflammatory cytokines results in a so-called cytokine storm, which leads to high risk of vascular hyperpermeability, multi-organ failure, and death. High blood concentration of inflammatory markers, a high neutrophil to lymphocyte ratio, and increased blood concentrations of inflammatory cytokines and chemokines have been associated with the COVID-19 severity and death. Post-mortem analysis of patients with COVID-19 have revealed inflammatory infiltration of the lungs, heart, spleen, lymph nodes, and kidneys. A study found higher concentration of leukocytes, C-reactive protein, and procalcitonin, and lower lymphocyte percentages compared with patients with non-severe COVID-19. A meta-analysis including more than 3,000 patients with COVID-19 identified higher concentration of IL-6, IL-10, and serum ferritin as strong indicators for severe disease. These are all IL-6, IL-10 and all inflammatory biomarkers. So we have to target on these inflammatory biomarkers for the treatment. Coagulation and COVID-19. COVID-19 has been found to be associated with increased coagulation activity. The endothelial dysfunction associated with hypoxia can favor intravasal coagulation during COVID-19 infection. It leads to change in lung vessels, massive pulmonary interstitial fibrosis, variable degrees of hemorrhagic pulmonary infarction, severe endothelial injury, widespread vascular thrombosis with nearly total occlusion of valvular capillaries, structurally deformed capillaries, and growth of new vessels through a mechanism of intussusceptive angiogenesis. Moreover, intravascular disseminated coagulation can be the terminal event in the severe COVID. Because of such condition, the complications, even after recovery of COVID-19, there will be still there will be uneasiness or fatigue and all such conditions will be prevalent even after the recovery from COVID-19. So anticoagulant therapy seems to improve prognosis. Diabetes is associated with the prothrombotic state with an imbalance between clotting factors and fibrinolysis and an increased risk of thromboembolic events. In a retrospective Chinese study in patients with diabetes admitted to hospital for COVID-19, non-survivors had longer prothrombin times and higher concentration of D-dimer. Patients with COVID-19 with diabetes often present other risk factors such as obesity, older age, and being admitted to hospital that could increase the procoagulative state and the risk of thrombotic complications. So, especially the COVID-19 with diabetes, because even though hypertension is more and than diabetes, but complications in the person of the COVID-19 suffering patient with diabetes, the complications are more. The hypertension prevalence of hypertension is more than diabetes, but the complications is more in the diabetes. So, importance of diabetes in COVID-19. An increased risk of infection was reported during previous outbreaks, that is the past history, that is SARS and MERS and H1N1 influenza. In those conditions also, the COVID-19, the infectious conditions, the prevalence of diabetes showed higher mortality rate and complicated state. So, in a British cohort of around 5,000 patients with COVID-19 in hospital, the risk of death was more common in those with uncontrolled diabetes. In a Chinese retrospective study, a subgroup of 24 patients with diabetes had greater mortality compared to 26 patients without diabetes. In a prospective cohort study of patients with COVID-19 from New York, the prevalence of diabetes and obesity was higher in individuals admitted to hospital than those not admitted to hospital. So, hospital IPD register also showed the prevalence of diabetes was higher among those who have admitted. In a meta-analysis of 8 studies, patients with COVID-19 with diabetes had an increased risk of ICU admission. That is, those with diabetes, mm, they may need the ICU admission and more the ventilatory care and all. In Italy, an analysis of around 27,000 patients who died from COVID-19 showed a prevalence of diabetes of 31.1%. So, how the world is working regarding COVID-19 and diabetes, because in case of diabetes, the severity of COVID-19 is more. Several diabetes federations around the world have issued statements and provided resources to help patients with diabetes to better understand their risk of COVID-19 and how to more efficiently manage their condition. An international panel of experts in the field of diabetes and endocrinology published in the Lancet Diabetes and Endocrinology the practical recommendations for the management of diabetes during the pandemic. An international group of diabetes experts announced the launch of COVID-DAB, a global registry of COVID-19 related diabetes and such other workforce is is on the way to combat COVID-19 with diabetes. So diabetes mellitus type 1 and type 2. Initial reports were mainly on people with type 2 diabetes, although recent survey have shown that individuals with type 1 diabetes are also at risk of severe COVID-19. Assessing the absolute and relative risk in more than 61 million individuals in England, that is 3.51 for people with type 1 diabetes and 2.03 for people with type 2 diabetes compared with people without diabetes. A survey done in England showed that around 23,000 patients with COVID-19 dying in hospitals, 32% had type 2 diabetes and 1.5% had type 1 diabetes. In the French population of the Coronado study, 3% had type 1 diabetes, 88.5% had type 2 diabetes, and 3.1 were diagnosed at admission. This is very important, diagnosing at admission, because the virus has also has the capacity to initiate, that is, it causes inflammation of pancreas cells and all. So it can also has the potential to initiate the diabetes in a non-diabetic, in a healthy adult. In an American survey, 33 individuals with type 1 diabetes with COVID-19 were identified. They were young and with high glucose concentrations. Age as a prognostic factor in COVID-19 with diabetes. Age is associated with worse outcomes in COVID-19. It can be hypothesized that this relationship is stronger in people with with diabetes for at least three reasons. First, the prevalence of diabetes increases with age to reach a peak in people with older than 65 years. Second, people older than 65 years are more likely to have a longer duration of diabetes and a greater prevalence of diabetic complications. Third, diabetes and older age often correlate with other comorbidities such as cardiovascular disease, hypertension, and obesity. SARS-CoV-2 causes diabetes and its complications. So here is the question. Yes, it has the potential to initiate the diabetes condition. SARS-CoV-2 infection itself might represent a worsening factor for people with diabetes, as it can precipitate acute metabolic complications through direct negative effects on beta cell function. These effects on beta cell function might also cause diabetic ketoacidosis in individuals with diabetes, hyperglycemia at hospital admission in individuals with unknown history of diabetes, and potentially new onset of diabetes. Worse prognosis of COVID-19 with diabetes. The reason for worse prognosis in people with diabetes is likely to be multifactorial, thus reflecting the syndromic nature of diabetes, age, gender, ethnicity, comorbidities such as hypertension, cardiovascular disease, obesity, a pro-inflammatory and pro-coagulative state all probably contribute to the risk of worse outcomes. So these are the conditions why in case of diabetes, the coronavirus will be more at its severity. Okay. So diabetes with other comorbidities, it is a retrospective analysis. Here they have said the COVID-19 in case of diabetic patients, there will be also hypertension, chronic cardiovascular disease, cerebrovascular disease, and COVID-19 without diabetes. That is, in case of COVID-19 affecting a person without diabetes, there will be less chances of having hypertension, cardiovascular disease, cerebrovascular disease. That is, with the diabetic condition, there will be other comorbidities also. Moreover, in the patients with diabetes, non-survivors had a greater prevalence of comorbidities than survivors. That is, survival rate is less in diabetic with other comorbidities. That is, with the diabetic plus COVID-19, the hypertensive patients were 83.9%. In a non-survivors, that is, case fatality rate was more, and diabetic survivors, that is hypertensive, were less. So if there is any other comorbidities along with the diabetes, then there will be more severity. Hyperglycemia and COVID-19, despite its syndromic nature, diabetes is still identified as a disturbance of glucose homeostasis and progressive worsening of hyperglycemia. In previous infectious disease epidemics like SARS, MERS, H1N1, etc., a high glucose concentration was shown to be an independent predictor of death and morbidity. This is likely to also be the case for COVID-19. The role of glycemic control before hospital admission, at the time of hospital admission, and during treatment in a hospital needs to be considered. So glycemic control before hospital admission, its importance. A cohort analysis of more than 5,000 patients with COVID-19 in the UK found that poor glycemic control before hospital admission, as indicated by HbA1c concentrations, was associated with a high risk of in-hospital death. Findings from a study also suggested a higher risk of mortality from COVID-19 in patients with either type 1 or type 2 diabetes, with HbA1c of more than 10% compared with those with HbA1c of less than 6.5%. So higher the glycemic content in the blood, the poorer the prognosis will be. Plasma glucose admission. A study showed death occurred in 40 out of 96 uncontrolled patients with hyperglycemia compared with death in 13 of 88 patients with diabetes. Altogether, these results highlight the need for improving glycemic control in all patients presenting with hyperglycemia, irrespective of known diagnosis of diabetes. So in hospital glycemic control, why we need to take a control on glycemic content in the blood? Random hyperglycemia during treatment in hospital was noted to contribute to worse prognosis for patients with COVID-19 in Wuhan. In around 1,000 patients with COVID-19 admitted to hospital in the USA, the mortality rate was 4 times higher in those with diabetes or hyperglycemia during the hospital stay than those with normoglycemia. Moreover, mortality was higher in those with hyperglycemia and without known diabetes than in patients with known diabetes. An unusually higher number of COVID-19 patients developing diabetic ketoacidosis or hyperglycemic hyperosmolar syndrome have been noted, and negative outcomes during COVID-19 have been reported. Although ketosis might have resulted from discontinuation of glucose lowering drugs because of anorexia before hospital admission, a direct effect of SARS-CoV-2 should be considered. The virus binds to ACE2 receptors, which among other locations are expressed in pancreatic tissue and beta cells in particular. Therefore, an acute loss of insulin secretory capacity along with a stress condition and the cytokine storm could lead to a rapid metabolic deterioration with development of diabetic ketoacidosis or hyperglycemic hyperosmolar syndrome. Additionally, hyperglycemic hyperosmolar syndrome is likely to increase the risk of thrombosis that already characterizes severe COVID-19. The SARS-CoV-2 tropism for the beta cell could cause acute impairment of insulin secretion or destruction of beta cells, resulting in the development of diabetes. This hypothesis is supported by previous observation that infection with human herpes virus 8 in a sub-Saharan African population induced ketosis-prone type 2 diabetes. So in this line, with this week, new onset diabetes has been reported in patients with COVID-19 being treated in hospital. In a population of around 453 patients with COVID-19, 94 were identified with new onset diabetes. Additionally, these individuals had a greater risk of mortality than those with hyperglycemia or diabetes. A dysregulated inflammatory innate and adaptive impaired immune response might occur in patients with diabetes, accounting for the systemic a dysregulated inflammation might occur in patients with diabetes, accounting for the systemic tissue damage and respiratory and multi-organ failure. Moreover, in the case of high viral load, the capacity to raise an acute immune response might be more severe adverse effects. And a study reported that patients with COVID-19 with diabetes had higher concentrations of inflammation related biomarkers such as C-reactive protein, serum ferritin, and IL-6, and a higher erythrocyte sedimentation rate compared with patients with COVID-19 without diabetes. These results were supported by findings from a multi-center study in a Chinese population of patients with COVID-19, showing that those with diabetes had a higher incidence of lymphopenia and elevated inflammatory biomarkers, C-reactive protein, and procalcitonin. For patients with COVID-19, those with diabetes and are more susceptible to the destructive effect of cytokine storm than those without diabetes. So in summary, poor glycemic control at hospital admission and during the hospital stay over, consideration should be given for a direct effect of SARS-CoV-2 on beta cell function and survival, causing worsening, rapid and severe deterioration of metabolic control in people with pre-existing diabetes or leading to the development of new onset diabetes. In people with hyperglycemia, glycemic control should be ensured to reduce the risk of threatening metabolic complications, which should integrate all therapeutic maneuvers put in place to reduce the risk of severe outcomes and mortality. Finally, achievement and maintenance of glycemic control should take into consideration the implications of the use of different glucose lowering agents in the setting of COVID-19. So it should be taken utmost care for the diabetic patients in case of COVID-19 for having their blood glucose in control. So therapies for COVID-19 in people with diabetes. Medical teams should ensure adequate glycemic control in patients with diabetes with COVID-19. This requires considering all potential implications that therapies for COVID-19 might generate when used in patients with diabetes. Treatment with chloroquine or hydroxychloroquine can cause hypoglycemia, particularly in patients on insulin or sulfonylureas, because of their effects on insulin secretion, degradation, and action. Conversely, antiviral drugs such as lopinavir, ritonavir could lead to hyperglycemia and worsen glycemic control. These agents can cause hepatic and muscle toxicity, so caution is recommended when they are used in combination with statins and in patients with fatty liver disease. Pharmacokinetic interaction with anti-diabetic drugs are also common, causing overexposure or underexposure to either antivirals or anti-diabetic drugs. Glucocorticoids have been used in patients with COVID-19 with severe acute respiratory distress syndrome as symptomatic and anti-inflammatory treatment. Their use, however, can worsen insulin resistance, sustain gluconeogenesis, worsen glycemic control, and cause marked hyperglycemia. So, health advisory for elderly population of India during COVID-19. The guidelines has been issued by Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. This we already aware of it. So most importantly, avoid meeting visitors at home. Ensure proper nutrition through home cooked fresh hot food. Hydrate frequently. Exercise is a must. Take your daily prescribed medicines regularly. And keeping contact with the family members is appreciated. Postpone the elective surgery. That is, if they're having any knee replacement surgery or anything such kind surgeries which are not emergency, that should be postponed. Clean the frequently touched surfaces and disinfect them regularly, and contact the nearest healthcare facility if in need. So don'ts, here we know everything. It is suggested that do not self-medicate and uh, make teleconsultation, because to avoid the crowd, don't go to crowded place like parks, market, and religious places. Don't go out unless it is absolutely essential. So these are all other guidelines they have issued. So post-COVID complications. So why we need to know about the post-COVID complications. Most people who have coronavirus disease recover completely within a few weeks, but some people, even those who had mild versions of the disease, continue to experience symptoms after their initial recovery. COVID-19 symptoms can sometimes persist for months, even though the antibody, if they test for their antibody, if that has been reduced, then also there will be symptoms persisting. The virus can damage the lungs, heart, and brain, which increases the risk of long-term health problems. These people sometimes describe themselves or as long haulers. Haulers is the transportation, that is, they will be carrying for a long time. The virus will be in them for a longer time. So they can be called as long haulers. And the condition has been called post-COVID-19 syndrome or long COVID-19. That is, after post-COVID complications, if there is any resistant lakshanas is there in them, then these are called as post-COVID-19 syndrome or long COVID-19. Older people and people with many serious medical conditions, that is comorbidities, are the most likely to experience lingering COVID-19 symptoms. But even young, otherwise healthy people can feel unwell for weeks to months after infection. The most common signs and symptoms that linger over time include, that is, even after recovery also, some signs and symptoms will be there in them. Those are fatigue, shortness of breath, cough, joint pain, chest pain, muscle pain, other muscle pain or headache, exertional dyspnea will be there, loss of smell or taste, memory, concentration or sleep problems, rashes or hair loss. Organ damage caused by COVID-19. Although COVID-19 is seen as a disease that primarily affects the lungs, it can damage many other organs as well. This organ damage may increase the risk of long-term health problems. Organs that may be affected by COVID-19 include heart, that is, imaging tests taken months after recovery from COVID-19 have shown lasting damage to the heart muscle, even in people who experienced only mild COVID-19 symptoms. This may increase the risk of heart failure or other heart complications in the future. Lungs, the type of pneumonia often associated with COVID-19, can cause long-standing damage to the tiny air sacs in the lungs. The resulting scar tissue can lead to long-term breathing problems. Brain, even in young people, COVID-19 can cause strokes, seizures, Guillain-Barré syndrome. COVID-19 may also increase the risk of developing Parkinson's disease and Alzheimer's disease. Blood clots and blood vessel problems. COVID-19 can make blood cells more likely to clump up and form clots. While large clots can cause heart attacks and strokes, much of the heart damage caused by COVID-19 is believed to stem from very small clots that block tiny blood vessels in the heart muscle. Other parts of the body affected by blood clots include the lungs, legs, liver, and kidneys. COVID-19 can also weaken blood vessels and cause them to leak, which contributes to potentially long-lasting problems with the liver and kidneys. Problems with mood and fatigue. People who have severe symptoms of COVID-19 often have to be treated in hospital's intensive care unit with mechanical assistance such as ventilators to breathe. Simply surviving this experience can make a person more likely to later develop post-traumatic stress syndrome, depression, and anxiety because of such the treatment they have received during severe COVID-19. They may also end up with traumatic stress syndrome, depression, and anxiety. Because it's difficult to predict long-term outcomes from the new COVID-19 virus, scientists are looking at the long-term effects seen in related viruses, such as the virus that caused SARS, that is from the past history. The scientists and the researchers, they are finding out what may be the result in this virus too. Many people who have recovered from SARS have gone on to develop chronic fatigue syndrome, a complex disorder characterized by extreme fatigue that worsens with physical or mental activity but doesn't improve with the rest. The same may be true for people who have had COVID 19. Many long-term COVID-19 effects still unknown. Much is still unknown about the how COVID-19 will affect people over time. However, researchers recommended that doctors closely monitor people who have had COVID-19 to see how their organs are functioning after recovery. Many large medical centers are opening specialized clinics to provide care for people who have persistent symptoms or related illness after they recover from COVID-19. So nowadays, post-COVID-19 care also is one of the wing in the hospitals or clinics and all. They are treating for post-COVID complications. So, what should be our approach in case of post COVID 19 complications? It should be multidisciplinary assessment, that is, pulmonology, neurology, and cardiology. All these aspects we have to check for. Mental health assessment and counseling, physical assessment, and physiotherapy, nutritional counseling also needed. And coming to Ayurvedic perspective. So, in any illness, if already persists in the body, then there won't be samyata. For having the samyata in the body, there should be dosha samyata, dhatu samyata, agni samyata, everything. But if a person is already suffering from any kind of illness, comorbidities, then there won't be samadosha, samadhatu, and all. So there won't be samyata in these parameters, and thus there will be lowered Vedic shamatva. Hence, effort should be put on, as it is told in the classicals. So here it has been said, Tatha Jvaradina api atankan mityopacharitan akala mrutyut pashyama iti. If interventions are not taken properly, then there will be akala mrityu. We have been studied in Ayurveda, that is, there is a kala mrityu and akala mrityu, and also the Daivikara and Purushakara mrityu. So the effort should be needed to prevent such complications. So if it is there is a mithyachara and all, if there is improper treatment, improper interventions, then there will be complications in any conditions. So interventions such as it has been told in Janapadodvamsadhyaya, that is Shodhana, Rasayana, Dehavritti. Dehavritti is nothing but Dinacharya and Ritucharya we have to follow. Sadvruta, and obeying or following the learned. That is, whatever the suggestion has been issued by the government or any medical professionals, that should be followed. Guidelines already it has been issued long ago itself regarding precautions, home remedies, medications, regarding the yoga and all. These are all improves the Agni. Agni, not only we should not take the Jatra Agni, at the level of Bhuta Agni also, because the anti-inflammatory biomarkers, we have studied the cytokine storm, and the inflammatory biomarkers will be increased in the blood. So it causes the tissue damage and there will be complications. Maybe it may be pancreas cells or lung tissues or anything. The reason is there will be less anti-inflammatory biomarkers. So we have to target this one. So these are the treatments, interventions. They increase the anti-inflammatory biomarkers in the body. So thus there will be samyata, it is attained. Okay, and also we have seen that Swabhava Paramavada, when the long-term illness, after long-term illness, when we start with Shodhana and all Rasayana and Dinacharya, when we adopt the proper lifestyle and all, the tissue will regenerate and there will be a less complicated state. So it is not difficult to treat, provided with all necessary precautions, proper interventions. it has been said in Charaka Vimana, 3rd chapter, Vaishajyeshu, Samyak Vihiteshu, Samyak cha avachariteshu, Janapadodvamsakarana, Vikarana, Kinchit Pratikarayoga Bhavati. If proper treatment has been, intervention has been administered, then that treatment will be successful, because span of life is predetermined and dependent of human effort. That is, the span of life has been dependent on two factors, that is Daivakara and Purushakara. So Daivakara, it is all dependent upon the other, which is not in our hand, and Purushakara, it is our own effort. If we do proper, if we follow proper precautions and necessary and all the suggestion advices given by the healthcare professionals, then the that complication stage, we won't go for that complication stage, and the condition will be recovered very faster. So thank you. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. I acknowledge my head of the institution, Dr. Gajan Reddy, head of the department, Dr. Venkat Krishna, and my guide, Dr. M.B. Kavita, and my heartfelt thanks to the Diksha team for their patience, cooperation, and to this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am, for taking your time to prepare for us such an extraordinary, wonderful presentation, which was incredibly informative. We shall
Thank you.
now
Thanks
go.
so much.
We shall now go ahead to the question and answer session. Delegates can post your question in the chat box. We have some questions in the chat box, ma'am. Shall I read it?
Yes, yes.
What can be done from an Ayurveda standpoint to boost immunity and prevention for infection?
So already the government has issued many guidelines. So for an healthy person, it is essential to follow the dinacharya and all, starting from Brahmi Muhurta Utthana, because these all physiological things, it will remain normal when we follow the said dinacharya and diet according to the ritus. And improper diet, improper lifestyle, it damages our physiological aspect, and the tissue damage will be there, so immunity will be hampered. The basically the lifestyle and the diet correction is a must, and upon that, the immunity boosters are there. That is, we should target about the inflammation over there. So all what have they said, the kashaya and all, we already know how to prepare and what are the ingredients. So they have the radical scavenging activity, increased phenolic content, and there will be radical scavengers in our body, free radicals in our body. So the said kashayas or any treatment, they will scavenges the free radicals from our body, which has been generated with such infectious viruses or any other conditions. So these are how we have to maintain our immunity by properly following the diet, lifestyle, upon that the home remedies and all. And moreover, the exercise is very must. The physical activity is very must, because in Viruddha Ahara also they have said, if any such condition arises because of Viruddha, any kind of Viruddha, you know, there are about 18 kinds of Viruddha. So it is not affected when a patient, when a person is having the improved Agni, the very much, if a person is having good Agni, if he is uh, physically fit, then the Viruddha will not affect. So exercise is very much important for immunity, improving the immunity.
Thank you, ma'am. Moving on to next question. How can we help patients of macular mycosis
Yes.
post-COVID symptom with Ayurvedic medicine?
Hello.
Ma'am,
Yes, yes. Can you repeat?
yes, ma'am.
It was breaking.
How,
How can we help?
how can we help patients of macular mycosis post-COVID symptom with Ayurvedic medicines?
So, the skin conditions, right? Skin and tissue damage will be there. So, in diet also, they have to properly follow they have to follow proper COVID-19 and mycosis. No, you asked.
Yes, ma'am. Macular mycosis and post-COVID symptom. Ma'am, ma'am, is it audible, ma'am?
Hello.
Ma'am,
Am I audible?
yes, ma'am.
Ma'am, your voice
So
is breaking,
it is
ma'am.
recovered from the COVID-19 situation after the recovery because there will be tissue.
Dear delegates, a ma'am has lost her network connection. She'll be back very soon. Thank you for your patience.
Hello.
Yes, ma'am.
Hello. Hello. Uh,
You're audible, ma'am.
yes. Yes. Yes.
Next question. Madam, can you please
Yes.
tell the
Is a must for any post any conditions that infectious conditions because there will be tissue damage and repeat again. Voice is breaking.
ma'am? Your voice is breaking, ma'am. Sorry, delegates, ma'am is facing some technical issues. Please stay with us. Ma'am,
Ma'am, could you please unmute yourself, ma'am?
Yeah. If it is not convenient, please mail me or WhatsApp me those questions. I can answer for you because the frequent cutting down of network is happening. How wherever you are comfortable with.
okay, ma'am. Shall I read the last question? Ma'am,
Yeah.
yes, ma'am. Madam, can you please tell the influence of COVID-19 in reproductive system? Any advice for
It's very
those
much
trying to
disturbing.
get?
The network is not so.
Okay, ma'am. We'll message you the questions, ma'am. Shall I conclude, ma'am? Thank you very much, ma'am, for answering all the questions. Now I request Dr. Anish John, Assistant Professor, Department of Kaya Chikitsa, Ayurveda College, Coimbatore, to deliver the vote of thanks.
Thank you. Is it audible?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Good evening, one and all. This is a privilege and a great joy for me to extend a vote of thanks on this occasion. And first of all, I would like to express my sincere thanks to Dr. Asha ma'am for giving an excellent coverage on COVID-19 comorbidities, post-COVID-19 complication and preventive care. Thank you, ma'am. I don't know whether ma'am is hearing or not. Thank you, ma'am, for sharing your knowledge and experience and for taking time to provide us with the timely information, which is the need of the hour. And I also extend my gratitude to whole Diksha team for providing us with the best platform. Let me thank the delegates who have responded so well to our invitation to participate in the webinar. And we also look forward to welcome you again in our next section. Thank you, one and all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. We have now come to the end of the session. The sun sets in the evening today with a promise that it will rise again tomorrow. Here's a hoping that the day comes will be a better tomorrow. See you all in the next session on understanding of recurrent pregnancy loss and its management through Ayurveda on 23rd of December. To know more about our updates, please do stay connected with our social platform. And that's all for today's most interesting session with a lot of new information for us to close our eyes with thought-provoking knowledge. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you.